welcome to the 40k Fireside podcast, where we discuss everything to do with competitive Warhammer 40k with your hosts Vic VJ and David Gaylord.
Alright, but fuck Vic VJ, we've got four of my friends here. I'm just setting the professionalism tone straight off the bat so everyone knows where it is. Well, welcome everyone, and this is going to be a WTC recap, and something particularly, I've got a lot of questions that I would like to get answered. So, as someone who didn't attend WTC, that's kind of why I wanted to get a group of people together and get some kind of inside knowledge and information, because it's one thing looking at WTC from the spectator standard, like the standpoint, you know, on BCP you're flicking through, but actually when you're there in the room, you don't really understand like the decisions that are happening at the pairings tables and all that stuff anyway. So we've got a couple of high level questions that are hopefully going to relate as well. But first of all, I'll go from the slides, but we've got Brian Seipp, of course, my teammate, and from Team USA, we've got Alexander Sacco from Team France, of course, winning this year, Jonathan from Team Sweden, who came 4th this year, and Liam, my teammate as well, from Team Belgium, who came 7th this year. I think the breakout year for Team Belgium as well, which is fantastic to see, playing France in the final round there as well. Before we get going, where can everyone reach you guys? Jonathan, have you guys got a Instagram page or a Team Sweden page?
We have a Team Sweden page on Facebook, and also a lot of our content goes through Vesla, which is the Swedish, like, what do you call it?
Media hub sort of thing?
I know you guys media hub, sure.
Yeah, you guys do the Road to the WTC series and stuff like that.
And there's a Discord, but also on YouTube, so check that out.
Nice. And Alex, how about you guys?
We got Instagram page mostly. Everything goes on Instagram, and also there is a French streamer that followed every year. It's called French Wargames Studio on YouTube, but he does also outside thing from the French team. So he only follows the WTC, but
Nice.
we got all of your round followed and upload on YouTube.
Nice. And Liam?
I mean, it's mainly on Facebook, Team Belgium 40k on Facebook.
Nice. And Brian, you guys have the Team USA page, right?
Yeah, so we have Team USA page. The US Wargaming Federation has a Discord as well, and we're actually going to be doing our captain election soon, followed by application for the next year. So look up.
Nice. The WTC season, it's a 12-month event. Doesn't stop. Okay, so let's jump into it. We'll try and start with some high-level questions. So let's talk about, you know, kind of WTC, the tournament. So during the Wargames live stream, kind of me personally, I noticed that there was about 4 to 5 times the number of people that were interested in the singles event rather than the teams event. And so the big question I've got is, has the interest in 40k teams kind of reached its peak at the moment, or do you think there's still really significant room to grow given the context of the last 2 years? What about Brian? You can start off.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that that is more of a reflection of we haven't quite figured out how to stream teams properly yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's so singles, like both players are trying to win throughout the entire game, which tends to make it a little more of an exciting game, because as things start to go poorly, or people take more risks, I think, and that doesn't always happen in team games. So finding the right team game in a given round is tricky because you're competing with a number of different factors. Like, does the person want to be on stream? Is the person somebody you want to have on stream? Is the game interesting? Like, and the section of overlap between those three things oftentimes is a game, maybe 2, and it might be like a same faction you've seen played a couple times. So trying to figure out a way of really maybe capturing all the rounds at once to really give the viewer the atmosphere for a team environment, I think is what's missing. I think that people going to teams, and every time I have singles players go to teams, they always come out of it with the opinion that teams is the best format to play Warhammer in, right? And so I think we just haven't really translated that to viewership yet, and that's mostly because of the medium.
I also think that part of it is, like, we're looking at Wargames Live, which is used to single tournaments, like the American viewership, which is mostly what Wargames Live has, is used to single tournament. But if you look at the stats from the French stream, I think they had very high numbers during the team.
It was more than 5,000 during the whole weekend.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Is that usual for the French stream? I guess I personally haven't been, I don't speak French, so I haven't watched it a lot, but is that kind of what was to be expected? Do you know, Alex?
We expected a bit, because last year we got a peak at 4,000, but it was constant this year and it peaked to 6,500, I think.
Nice.
So it's a lot because also the French stream is more focused on the French team and not on the game. So you speak only in French and only following all of the player and not a single game like Wargame Live. It's really different.
Yeah. Do you think
I
that?
think-
I was going to say, do you think that interweaving the narrative is an important part of broadcasting teams for the following each team? Because I think that's kind of something a user can like tether to, so to speak, over a multi-hour sort of thing.
I think it's different because from what I know, the people that know how to play 40k prefer to watch Wargame Live, and the people that don't know 40k prefer to watch, like for example, the French stream when they are French native speaker. Obviously, like my parents or my girlfriend can follow the stream and understand what is going on. When if they watch only Wargame Live, and even if they could speak English well, they could not understand that well what's going on for everyone. Because you have an interview of the coach, you follow the table, you see what is done a lot of time, and you can really see how the round is going for the 8th player. So it's really more focus on following for people that doesn't know how to play 40k.
Sorry, I cut you off there, Lynn.
No problem. But I was mentioning because even outside of the French stream, I think at Warmaster you had mainly Wargame Live that were streaming. You had a bit of Vesla as well, and I think that was it. So you had 2 stream tables, and at WTC you had the French, the Australian, the German, the Polish, Wargame Live, still Vesla. So you have like 3 times. I think if you add up everything together, you will have more view during the WTC team than the single. I'm pretty sure
awesome.
that.
Okay, cool. That's that sounds really positive then. You guys still, I guess we're all, we've all been to WTC. Are you guys still thinking that WTC and team events are going to be growing in your community, like in your national countries,
I think-
as the biggest growing part, like instead of singles? Do you think teams is growing faster than singles?
For myself, I don't know if it's growing faster than single, but I think there is way more, I would say, potential to make team interesting than single. Because at the end of the day, when you watch single as I would say maybe someone that watch from outside, you only see a game. So if you're interested in that matchup, etc. Where I think you can create way more of a narrative around team generally. So if, like Brian mentioned, we find maybe like the optimal way of filming, of like making content about team in live, I think we can create much more of an enthusiasm on team.
Cool.
And I think the most important thing to follow between this view are that in single tournament, when you watch the first, second, or third round, you doesn't every time have, you just have a cool matchup. For example, you don't have like well-known player everything. When WTC, you know that every team got their best player that can put on the table, so the level of the game is always maximal. And something else to add is different in single, because in single you just watch to watch the game and this is it, but in team you always have one interest, because you are either for the nation that is playing, or either following your own country, or either following one match that you want to see, or following one particular player. So you always have an interest of watching the stream for the team event. And for your question about the growing community, as Brian said yesterday, I think for the French community, we don't have anything that grow that fast, because we are always playing every year, every time in team tournament because of the French league system. So yes, we have more team registered, but I think this year, and maybe I'm wrong, but we are more than 180 team, I think, registered for the French league system. So you can just do that each time. Mostly six team player, except for the higher league that is 8 team players. So basically all of the French community play in team 2 times a year. So yeah, we are more focused on the team.
I have a question actually for you, Alex, which I kind of just thought of is, I always feel like the French have a bit of an advantage with the viewership because they know your players and your team so well, right? So they're able to kind of follow the personalities as much as anything else. Do you think that's something which is important for the viewership to kind of buy in? That they have a team when they're doing this coverage, they're really tracking it from the perspective of, who these players are, what they know about them, kind of they have that as narrative, as we talked about, right? Kind of following through, or do you think that that's not as important?
Yes, this is definitely important. For example, Olivier, that is this year the team captain, and he goes a lot on the French Wargame YouTube channel for everything, review codex or anything else, and people know he plays Space Marines. So you follow, for example, Olivier for the Space Marines play, for the captain play. If you are more about Chaos, you follow me, or Matt, that he play a lot KO. If you are more about GI, you follow Nico, and every player is well known on the French circuit. And we had one guy that was new, it was Alban on Death Guard, and he was like the newcomer on the team, so there is a narrative behind that. So you follow the newcomer on the team, and there is a lot of narrative. So yeah, definitely people want to see how this 8 individuality do as a team. Definitely.
Yeah. It definitely seems like, obviously from not only a results perspective, but the way that you describe it, Alex, that France really has it nailed down, the infrastructure for playing teams, you know. I mean, in the UK, we just have kind of this distributed team tournament circuit with UKTC and some other small stuff, but it doesn't really seem to breed anything like you guys have in France. We have a dedicated stream, the national team is associated with that stream, and the community kind of galvanizes behind it. So I think that seems to be the model to replicate if any other country is looking at it. Nice, awesome. Why don't we jump into the next one? So recently we've had Death Guard, Imperial Knights, and Chaos Knights have received about a 200 points nerf, give or take what you're playing. Some people are speculating that this was because of the Nova tournament coming up, and Games Workshop not wanting it one of their flagship tournaments, or that tournament really being dominated by those factions as much. It begs the question, would it have been good to release its points update before the WTC as a spectator, or what do you think? It's still bred good team compositions regardless of that? Happy to take anyone. Maybe Jonathan, because you guys were playing all three of these.
We were definitely not playing Imperial Knights.
Oh, sorry.
Incorrect. No, but like it definitely matters less for teams, right? Because it just strong teams list just means you have something to prepare for and prepare against. I mean, for Imperial Knights as well, I don't think they were definitely not good enough to play in your 8. So I mean, for the top teams, I don't think that would have changed much. It would have helped some teams if Imperial Knights were left. I think. And like Death Guard, yeah, I mean they were too strong, but also if you look at Death Guard's performance over the event, it's not like they smashed every table. They got 10s and 11s because people figured out a way to counter them, and that's part of teams that makes it like more interesting. That even when there are overpowered things that you can build and you can plan for it.
So do you think it's actually some ways a positive thing to have a kind of dominant faction in a meta game going into WTC, and that actually figuring out how to deal with that is a part of the puzzle in a positive way?
It can be. I mean, it can't be Eldar start of this edition broken, because then it gets 20s every time anyway. But like, yeah, I think it's fine to have a top dog, and I think that's fine in singles as well. Obviously, these three were a bit too strong, but yeah.
I think Olivier was on a podcast recently, I think it was the Ardor one, and he put it well. I'm going to steal what he said, which is like there are meta maker and meta shaper factions, right? And so Eldar are an example of meta breaker, which is like you're just taking them because they're just smashing all the time, and then you have armies like this, which are meta shapers, which is like that this is going to be in comps, you're going to have to deal with it, but there are ways to, and I think that adds a level of interest to the team comp building stage, which is a positive. Obviously, I think you probably would have still had that with these nerfs. Like these would still be very strong armies. Maybe IK kind of falls out for more teams, but CK and Death Guard, I would expect to still make the 8 even with those nerfs. So I think you'd still be pretty interesting.
Okay, so maybe not a huge impact there. Alex or Liam, any thoughts on that one?
No, I think like it have been said, like I don't think the meta matter that much in team anyway. So like, and to be fair, it would have to come down a lot earlier than just before the WTC.
Yeah.
It would have need to be like end of June basically.
Yeah.
So like quite unrealistic from like the editor that don't really follow the WTC, right? So like, I think it's a bit whatever.
Yeah, the list lock is so far in advance, right? It's compared to normal tournaments, it's quite far.
Yeah, like I know we've got some team tournaments coming up soon for the regular audience listeners as well, and I think it can be quite easy to get a little bit depressed kind of in the meta when these three factions were pre-nerf, for example. So I think it's really good advice that you guys are given here, that when you think about kind of the meta and in teams event, like the meta doesn't have as big of an impact because there are counters and there's solutions, and actually you get some longevity by finding creative solutions to those. I mean, obviously France this year didn't take any of the Knight combos, and they had some pretty out there lists, I would say. So it just goes to show there's so much depth outside of something just being presented as a problem. There's also depth in finding solutions there as well. Nice.
I think there is something to see in your question because the nerf is made for the Nova tournament, which is a single tournament on a Games Workshop layout, and the WTC, as the other said, is a team tournament. There is something to see between Death Guard and the Knights. They are not the same because the Knight is more likely a 20-0 army or a 0-20 army. The Knight, you can have like 2 counter in the team and you can just dictate the pairing. This is exactly what France did with the Aldari and Olivier list with a lot of love cannon. And this is just the counter for this list and it's okay. The Death Guard is really more problematic because the 10 Guard is a minimum 10 army. And even in a team, it's really important to have this kind of team because you have an army that go against almost everyone and do 10. And this is in a team tournament really good because when you don't know what to put in defender or in attack or anything else, you just put the Death Guard. You know that's a really hard minimum 8 and it's fine because this is really hard to deal with. The thing is, just to do this point, I wish it could have done better because they didn't take the time to review the rule or anything else, and I think they took way more time just to do some point, and it would have been good before WTC, yes, but in the end it was not like a deal breaker because we know how to play against this. The thing is, Death Guard was the only faction, only 2 teams missed Death Guard in the end. When Chaos Knight, a lot of people didn't have Chaos Knight or Imperial Knight.
Oh,
But
yeah, nice.
at the end of the day, we are playing teams, so every team has the same weapon anyway, right? So it average out like both teams have in a face-off, both teams have Death Guard. So in team, as broken as it is, it's fine.
Yeah. And well, I was going to go on a tangent there, but I won't go. Okay, talking about faction-specific stuff here. Kind of following the same train of thought here, I think. Like, I remember not being part of like really in depth like New Zealand's list selection and team selection and stuff, bouncing some ideas off. But I remember when the Knight update came up, and I think the Tyranid subterranean detachment, and that was kind of all that same time. It's pretty clear that teams had differing opinion on Knights, like 1 Knight, 2 Knight, 0 Knights. Like I wasn't involved in the prep phase as much, so that would be much more common for you. Like you guys would be much more situated those conversations. But when it's all said and done, I think France won without Knights. Germany came second with both Knight variants. Sweden, you guys are Chaos Knights, and Poland came 5th with Knights as well. So at the end of the day, I feel like this question needs to be put to bed. Like, was it better to bring Knights, or was it like better to play? Is 1, 2, 0? Like, is there a consensus on what was optimal here?
I think, I mean, yeah, it's hard to say, but I think that a huge problem lots of teams had, but they did not figure out Knights early enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think people looked at like the 6 Lords of Dread CK list. That is absolutely not good enough for teams.
Okay, because Fred did play 6 Lords of Dread.
No. He played Inferno.
Oh, he played Infernal. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
So like, if you start at that list, then you will not find, like, if you don't find Infernal fast enough, then it's not gonna work. If you don't find, and I think that even the 6 like Infernal Bigs had obvious counters in the meta. That's why we settled on a slightly different build. But yeah, obviously the German and Polish strategies also was that sometimes CK and IK falls down in pairings and find something to do later. Once our strategy was just we first defend CK every single round.
Okay. Yeah, while we're with you, Jonathan, I think you guys were playing the 3.5 kind of bigs, was it? Rodriguez?
Yeah, 3.5 bigs, M4 armatures, and like a Beast of Nurgle.
Yeah. So. Were you guys happy with that? Like all said and done? Do you think that was a good like combination to run?
Yeah, I mean it was basically the list that would we knew it was going to first defend every round. We knew that it would basically never accept Eldar as an attacker, but anything else it accepted it would beat with at least like a 12. So
okay, nice.
It's a very solid way to start out.
Yeah, seems really strong. obviously Alex, France weren't playing knights, and they were playing kind of recon guard and 80 berserks and stuff like that. Clearly, you guys had the team mentality of knights were going to be in the tournament, but instead of taking them, you guys were going to kind of prey on them a little bit. Did you guys see success in that, or do you think at the end of the day maybe it would have been better taking one of these variants, or maybe Chaos Knights with the Death Guard, maybe?
I think in the end, only one mistake was made when doing the team and choosing a codex. It was playing CSM and not Emperor Children. This is the only mistake we made with the team, because Knight, as we discussed, we played Knight a lot. We had 2 Knight players taking it. I almost played Knight and I tried it for the team, but really fast. We was like, okay, everyone gonna take Knight, or almost everyone, every serious opponent gonna play Knight, and I think USA did the same thing in the end. So we are gonna think how to counter them, because when you can pin down hard one army in the pairing, it can dictate the pairing until the very end. And I think the strength of France basically is doing the pairing. Without any arrogant thing or anything, we did the best pairing against every team. Like, we outpaired every team every time. We had a good matrix and it worked really well. Only the Sweden round was a bit more chaotic. The pairing was okay for our side, but it went really chaotic and our winning match went down, our losing match went up. But in the end, the pairing was fine. Against USA, we won only with the pairing, as Brian said yesterday, and Poland same, and Belgium same. It was only the pairing speaking.
So if I can ask on the pairings, because I think this is really useful for people that are playing kind of smaller tournaments or people that have never attended a WTC. Do you think that the result of you doing so well in pairings was because of the army compositions you took, or because you're so good at doing pairings?
I mean, it's both, because we play a lot of team and we know how to do pairing, we build a team composition to do a specific pairing. And because we have a lot of flexible army and we know every player so well, we know who can push, you know who can def, you know who can be flexible. In the end, you are like really flexible and we can have a really huge strategy. Like, for example, if to give you a bit of insight, I get the pairing against USA. From the very start, when we are doing the meeting, the day previous the match, we end up with 5 out of 8 theoretical match that went on the table. So we did the pairing like so well in amount that we knew these 5 match would have come. The only surprise, and you discussed a lot yesterday, guys, was Eldar against Recon. That was the only surprise in your side. Everything else was I was meant to go on John, Alban was meant to go on Anthony, and everything else. So that was really fine on our side. And playing with your knight, playing with a really obvious army, help with that. Because people with misestimate, people with misprepare against some less known army, for example, Recon, that was the best example of that. I'm pretty sure people did misestimate a lot of time. So it's easier to do a pairing without Knight, and I think Knight was a mistake. I still think Knight is a mistake, and I wouldn't have taken them at all, and not even in allies, because when people prepare to face Knight, they prepare to face the Knight body, and if you take only one in ally, it's like 300 points for nothing in your list, because people are prepared to kill like 5 or 6 of them.
They're also in allies, they don't get rotate, they don't get any rules, they don't get infernal, feel no pain, so they're so squishy when you take them as allies.
The only thing is in Death Guard, at least you have the +1 AP because of the Death Guard army rule, but this is it. But it's so squishy, you die to nothing. You're like 2 Predator with less cannon, just kill the Knight every time.
We saw Liam with Belgium. You guys were playing the 6 bigs. Is this the same list as Fred Infernal Lance?
No, it was
6 bigs?
Slightly different. We didn't have an Atropos. We went for pure Daka. We had 3D spoiler with the advance and shoot.
Right. Okay.
Instead of but it's basically the same idea.
So would you have taken that at the end of the day? Do you think?
I mean, I made my comp based on team on player, not on really meta, and I have like a player that only play Knight. So we had basically we had signed off for a Knight player at the very start, even before they were good. So I mean before the codex, I would say. So like I was happy they were good, because they would have been shit we would have still bring them. So like,
Yeah, and that's the undersong of reality, isn't it? Really, when you're making a team composition and you're dealing with players, there is a pragmatic approach really that you have to adhere to, isn't there?
So in the end, I think CK was definitely correct. I think EK would have been a mistake to take, I think, and a lot of teams felt in that trap, in my opinion, and I agree with Jonathan here. So, and just bringing the one night meant that we were not really like, even if your opponent take like counter to night, you don't have to put it in defense. And I was of the opinion that you don't really need to put the knight don't really need that table that much. Like, it's cool to have an open table, but the knight can play on a dense table as well, in my opinion. So, so having one knight was not too much of a constraint at the end of the day. So I was still happy with that choice.
And Brian, Team USA had exactly one knight as well, didn't they? How did you guys find that? Obviously, I think Gonyo was one of the...
one night model.
Gonyo was obviously one of the only Death Guard players that had the knight ally in with it. Was it the right choice in hindsight? If you guys were not taking a knight, do you think that was the better Death Guard list as Gonyo? If you can speak on his behalf.
I think that was a major asset in his list for sure. I think that if we had tuned into Infernal Lance earlier, there's a reasonable chance we would have taken it. When Knights first kind of got that reduction in points, we started from a place of IK is obviously the better one, CK is pretty good too. But then as we tested, it became pretty obvious that once we discovered Infernal Lance, that no, Infernal is the good one, and IK is just kind of fine. Like, IK is much easier to control. And I think that because we discovered Infernal Lance as late as we did, and our comp had really kind of starting to solidify that point, it was hard to justify trying to slip in a CK army at that stage. If we were to go back, I would say maybe. I don't dislike our comp that we took. I think that we had good answers for Knights in general, and I'm pretty okay with generally how things went. But I do think, like, looking at it, it's really hard to argue against kind of the Sweden model there. I mean, Bjorn, I was just looking up his scores, at a pod he got 320s and then a 15, 15, 13, 12, right? That's pretty great for a defender on their army, on their table where theoretically people are coming to gun for you, right? So, it's how much of that is CK and how much of that is Bjorn is just the Chaos Knight Incarnate, I'm not sure, but it's definitely great results. So it's really hard to say that was the wrong choice,
But I think that is also because our list was not the standard CK list. It wasn't obvious how you play against the armatures and how that changed the matchup.
That was the version of CK that we were kind of looking at too, I think, when we were trying to do it. So when I saw that, like, your version of it, I know, like, yours and England's were the two that I was like, this is the best versions of CK currently in the event.
Nice. Awesome.
Because we were also very confident that we were going to win the CK mirror every time someone tried to run 6 bigs into us. And that happened once or twice, I think.
Nice. Awesome. Well, hopefully that gives some people some insight in terms of whether or not you've got an event coming up soon, whether you should be playing Knights. Okay, this is a bit of a personal question. Because I didn't play this year, but I was playing Thousand Suns last year. And, Thousand Suns looked, from my opinion, very strong coming into the event after a great performance last year, and a pretty similar playstyle to the new Codex, I would have thought. Were Thousand Suns the right choice, and why did so many teams end up passing on them? I think only USA in the top 5 or 6 were the only ones to take them.
We had them as well.
Yeah. Oh, you had them as well in Sweden?
They were, to be fair, our 8th army. Like, there was the last army in, so we might as well not have had them, but they were fine in the end.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Yeah. But I mean, I guess maybe Brian, since you were playing Thousand Suns, like, how did they feel at the event? Do you think that they were a good all-round army to take in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, besides the obvious hard counter recruit hunting pack, I think that they're pretty. As for you, Jonathan, I think that they're pretty good. I think they were. I mean, they're a really good choice. I think that I've been doing a lot of kind of retrospection on the army and how I played it and everything else, and I think that it's difficult to separate with an army like Thousand Suns, where it's so skill expressive, whether the army is where the power is, or the agency it gives you, and then you exercise is where it is, right? So, like, I feel like it went pretty well, and I had a bunch of failure points that I kind of encountered at critical points that I felt like drove down a lot of my scores. But I also feel like that volatility was there and not recognized by me in the lead up. If you actually look at each of the top teams, as far as I am aware of it, and Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but like they all have very unique and individual reasons for why they didn't take Thousand Suns, right? So like I know, for example, on Germany, Arna's the Thousand Suns game player, and he was also their Knights player. And when he switched the Knights because they recognized that they wanted IK, there was too little time for somebody to switch, right? I know in Poland, they were really focused on Warp Meld, and they don't really have much of a T-Suns pilot, the closest one being Pumbaa, who was removed from the process this year. Alex, my understanding was that you were the T-Suns pilot and that you hadn't had much of a chance to put in as many reps as maybe to kind of decide if you wanted to take him or not. You tell me if that's wrong. But generally, I feel like every one of the top teams had a very different personal reason why they didn't take him or not take him. And it wasn't that the Army, they decided that the Army wasn't the sauce or wasn't good. I do think, thank you, Jenna. I do think that it's one of those, it's one of the things where the Army itself is as good as the player plays it to be. And so if you had somebody who could play it, you probably came out of the testing practice or the prep thinking that it was very, very good, and otherwise you maybe came out of it thinking it's fine or good, right? As in Poland's case.
Yeah, is that kind of your experience as well, Jonathan, with Team Sweden?
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. Like it was fine. It did like mostly draws for us, and I think that's about where it is. And I mean, if you have one of your better players playing it, maybe you can get more out of it. But also like it was definitely fine. That's what I'll say. But and then we had some people doing really well with it, like the Danes. I mean, there's something to say that maybe the Danes played worse teams overall than some other teams, but like I know the Thousand Suns player and he's very good, so
yeah,
obviously
he had a very unique build as well.
Yeah. The Terminators, I think he's been running them for like 2 years.
Yeah. Stick to those Terminators. Yeah, that one definitely caught me from left field. Alex, obviously you were the Thousand Suns player for France last year as well. What was the decision-making process there? Was it more that you guys wanted a bit more melee pressure in the meta, or were you kind of afraid of some matchups kind of occurring often, or was it just simply you weren't comfortable with the amount of practice you're going to need to play an army like Thousand Suns, perhaps?
There is two things. As Brian said, this is more like a player thing. For example, and in France, we had this year 2 players that could play T-Sun because I was the T-Sun player last year, and we got Alban this year that also played T-Sun the whole year. But when Death Guard came out, Alban just rushed into Death Guard, and we could not leave Death Guard home. So obviously, Alban was out of the T-Sun speaking, so I was left alone. And to be perfectly honest, we did a masterclass together. I like T-Sun, but I don't like how they play for a team, because I like to push and do big score, which I didn't do this WTC. But the thing is, you cannot ever push with T-Sun. If the opponent just refuses to play the game, you cannot do anything. And we found T-Sun that need a bit of the protection in pairing. Like, you cannot. It doesn't need that huge pairing protection overall, but you need a bit of protection. And you need at least a table, at least to dodge 1 or 2 matchup. And we had already had some team like that in the team. For example, the World Eater list was all or nothing that need protection. We had the Recon team, all or nothing. The Eldari list had also some counter, and it was not flexible enough to fit in the team. So in the end, we went for something else. That was Bile, which was more likely okay in the Matrix. It went out a bit, but it was okay for the pairing wise. You cannot hard push a Bile, and you don't need any table or anything else, and it's alright. So T-Sun didn't fit for this reason in the end. But I think it's an okay army, and it was one of the answers to Chaos Knight, but just for a draw. You can play for a draw into Chaos Knight, and that's okay.
Interesting. There we go. I'm glad to see them not be as much of a menace. So talking about kind of team composition here as well. One thing I thought was really fascinating as well is we see quite a different approach from teams. If I look at in particular, France this year taking some lists that were quite one-dimensional, I would say, right? Like Bio, Recon, World Eaters, where other teams I feel like opted for more well-rounded armies, like USA, for example. I mean, they have GSC in there as kind of a skew. Sweden historically and Poland have taken kind of skew lists, but they often more look like big chunky lists. I was thinking the year before last, especially with Sweden, and then Poland coming with like Wolfjail and Admech. So kind of given that context, what does the skew environment look like right now? Maybe start with you, Alex, because from when I first looked at France's lists, I was really surprised to see Recon in there, of course, and I chatted to Nico afterwards. But I feel like your list and the World Eaters were particularly going hard in one direction. Is that something that you guys are leaning more into these days, do you think?
To be fair, this is what I think and what a lot of people in France think about, for example, USA and France. We have a lot of different approach. And I would like to add Sweden and Poland with the approach of France, because it's more likely the team legacy. When you play so much in team, you having skew list or monodimensional list help a lot in the pairing, because in team, the most important thing is doing big differential. You need to do 1 or 2 15 plus to win the round. And what we see with the USA, and it's less like that the year after the year, but like for example 2 years back in the day, USA was 8 solo list. Same for England, it was 8 solo list. And because all over the year, the player play way more in a solo tournament, that you need to have a good solo list to win. But in a team, a good solo list translates to a team that put 10 to 12. And this is it, only 10 to 12. So you don't put any differential, and you only have one of these lists that go down to a 0, and you lose the round. And this is what we don't like. So this is why you prefer to play way more monodimensional army, because the pairing is way more hard win, hard lose, and it's easier to play around that. It's easier to play around the pairing and to go for the big win. So this is mostly because of the team approach, the team legacy, and the fact that we play in team all year. We have some player in the team that play only the team tournament, that doesn't play a single tournament for over the year. So this is a really different mentality when preparing for a tournament and the matrix. And for example, yes, this year we had the Recon, the World Eater, but as well, Olivier list was not made to play against some horde army. It was really focused on taking the big down. So against Knight, it was good. It didn't wait okay every time, but it was good against some heavy mechanized army. It was really good, and it was the same for everything.
I could see Liam shaking his head a little bit there. A fan of the skew, Liam, or just good armies is a great approach?
I agree with the fact that having some skew is always useful. Like this year at Belgium, we also had some skew list, and like skew is necessary in team, and I also agree with the fact that single list, if you only bring 8 single lists in team, it will lead to maybe inefficient results. But I still find that like most of the time, actually, the team list is a good thing. Like team list can be good single list. Like the skew don't like. I mean, for example, I know
ratio. It's a ratio. For example, you need to have 2 to 3 skew list and 5 good solo list.
Because like I never played a list that I was saying that I only played in team, right? I tend to always play my team list in single as well, and it work well. So like I think both approach is okay, but like I agree with the skew there, and it's important to have a bit of like sauce in the roster, like especially outside of the skew. I would say it's like the weird skew. Sometimes the weirder your list are, it can be really a strength, like because at the end of the day, estimation is like the most important thing in team, and bringing weird skew list will fuck up the estimation of your opponent, which I think is a great place to be.
Yeah, speaking of trying to get estimations, how was that, Brian, when I assumed Team USA was preparing? against Team France, for example, with some pretty bizarre lists there, or the wider field. Does that really ring true in a sense that it's really hard to get a grasp on how these armies are played if they're quite skewed in one direction?
I think I find factions that are less played are much harder to get those matchups into. So, for example, like the U.S. is for want of an AdMech player for a while. Richard plays, but in a very different style than say like Kalanka was using this year, and Poland's kind of does. So, for example, that army felt much harder to practice into than the France list. The French lists were in the factions that we expected, and some of those armies are things which have shown up in the U.S. singles space before, right? Like, I mean, like Anthony famously, one of the first Bile players. The guard list is, oh God, I'm going to get it wrong. It's either like Floof or
Fish, Nemo.
Nemo, yeah, thank you. Nemo, I think, plays that, and so we're able to kind of like bootstrap a lot of our experience and practices by like tapping into that, which is I think one of the advantages of the size. But obviously, you got to be careful, and you got to play the reps, and sometimes you get it wrong, as in the case of Nick. But it's like, I think it's more difficult, like I said, from the faction side than from the army specific comp side.
Yeah. America didn't really have any really hard skews. I mean, you guys had GSC, which I thought was very surprising that no other teams really took GSC much this year. But is that kind of design, do you think, for your guys' team comp?
I think that the GSC. I think I think one of the things that we're gravitating towards more as the meta becomes more stable is that we feel like there's more value in having not so much skew lists, but having people on comfort picks, right? So armies which are fine in the meta, which is becoming more true for more armies every time a slate comes out, I feel like. But you're really experienced with, because then what often happens is you can, in the practice time leading up to the event, is you can really focus on those couple matchups that you maybe haven't played before, rather than worrying about the space otherwise, or you can abstract away a lot of the differences and be like, oh, I'm playing into World Eaters, I know how my army does into Black Templar Horde, it's a similar damage tempo, so now I just have to understand the nuances of this matchup that World Eaters are doing differently than Black Templar, for example, just as like an example of that. And I feel like that's generally where our comps have been gravitating towards, is more focused on armies that players know really, really well. That was, for example, why we took EC with John. John had a ton of games with it. It was the army he was the most practiced in. And I think that really showed over the course of the event.
Nice, awesome. Jonathan and Liam, got anything to add on the skew front here?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about, because like the year we allegedly skewed with the demons, the IK, the CK. I mean, our intent was never to like bring big guy lists and like overpower the opponent's last cannons or whatever. It was mostly the fact that we found those armies to be extremely strong when played by the players we had. For example, like we took IK last year without anyone else taking them, but that was because we had a very well-defined role as first defender for them that will not like this year where he will just crush every matchup as first defender, but he would take like 10s or 7s and 8s, and that was fine as an 8 army list. And like anyone who plays against Joel on like demons or World Eaters this year, which was just demons in disguise, knows that like that is such a hard thing to prepare for, that kind of army, and that really showed in the pairings and like when people played against it on the table. We did not understand what was going to happen.
We got to see Yol play against Team New Zealand as well on the stream. And a fantastic player. Someone I used to watch play Magic as well, of course.
I just assumed, Jonathan, that Sweden that year took the big units because you guys weren't allowed anything but hand luggage on the flights. So you just had to adjust accordingly. But
I mean, it's harder to fly with big knights than a normal army, so that doesn't make any sense.
children fly for free, don't they, infants? I thought that was that a rule?
Yeah, I mean, if you get extra stones.
Let's do this one really quick. Like, I feel like this year, obviously, Death Guard doesn't auto-include. Now with the points shake-up, kind of looking forward, is there an auto-include army to the same level of dominance that we've seen Thousand Suns the year before and kind of Death Guard this year?
I could see people cutting Death Guard now, but I don't think they should. I think
Okay.
Death Guard should probably be in every 8 still.
Yeah.
I think
Alex?
CK should be in every 8 still.
Alex, any auto-include armies for you? Now that the points have kind of shaken up a little bit?
I still think Death Guard is not to include, and I would like, if you have one Eldari player, you should take Eldari because it's one of the best army in the game right now. Either War Host or Aspect Host is fine with both, but to be really fair, Death Guard is still a not to include. Like, it's way too strong because the main problem of Death Guard is the rules. I speak a lot with friends or anything like that. I say to them, if you do not change any rule, Death Guard should take at least 400 points to be nerfed. And they only took in some lists like 200 points, and people, even the Death Guard player, were like, okay, whatever. So, and in 40k, when your army gets nerfed and the players say, whatever, this is not a good sign that this is way now.
Wild sense. They only took 200 points, and they said whatever.
It's like, okay, fine, I'm gonna just take 2 drawn away. I'm gonna have still so much unit. I still deep strike within 6 inches. I still have +1 AP across the board. You still have everything, like everything.
You and I both on that one, brother. Liam, Death Guard and Eldari still in the auto-include range, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Eldari, obviously. Really strong army. It was probably already an auto-include at WTC, so yes. But yeah, outside of that, it's just... I mean, I would say T-Sun is still also probably on the start to grow up a bit, but I mean, I still like them, but yeah. We have like a bunch of other factions that you could see, but it's what in auto-include, I would still say Death Guard and Eldar.
Brian, anything else on top of that?
No, and Marines, obviously. I think
Marines.
Marines
as well.
Marines is still there. Like Black Templar or even Space Wolf are probably still really, really strong.
Yeah,
Anything else on there, Brian?
I would say, to me, like in the past, auto-include armies are these armies which are just like beating everything else. Now an auto-include army has morphed into an army that can play anything. And because there's so much more diversity in the teams. So to me, those are the auto-include armies, which is why I would probably still include T-Suns there. I do feel like they can still generally play kind of whatever they need to in a reasonable way. And I think, as you said, Marines are a good space for that too. I think any army that can kind of take whatever it needs to and come out of it with like a draw, like kind of minimum space, I think that's really powerful and should be in the comp.
EC,
Okay,
maybe. Cool. If you have the player, EC is a good army.
Well, we'll get to EC.
Okay.
I would love to talk about EC and Eldari in one moment. Every year, I feel like there's kind of a list that came out, and really, like, kind of people were like, wow, that was a really good list, or after the tournament performed really well, but I kind of feel like with the growing prevalence of collaboration, pre-WC tournaments, like Pyra, online information, it's so much harder to have like undiscovered stuff. Like, did anyone, any of four of you have a list that you were like, man, that was really good, we didn't think about that? Or was there no real big shockers this year?
I think I'll ban Death Guard because he was one of the only one to play Virulent. Was a bit on the off-meta step, obviously off-meta, like not a big off-meta because still Death Guard, but the Virulent was nice and was maybe a bit better than Hammer because of the -1 stratagem or the abuse of the Demon Prince, Lone Operative, 5 Feel No Pain, T12, Free Strat and anything else, and it was really good. But there is not one list that surperform on everything.
No, I don't think this year any of the list was that surprising. Like, I mean, to be fair, I was aware of a lot of the list a bit everywhere, so nothing did surprise me, but maybe like the amount of hackers can maybe have surprised people. because you saw maybe a lot of hackers. I mean, I knew that list as well. The 80 Berserker is probably the 80 Berserker in like en gros vanilla was a bit of a surprise, but like I think overall everything was pretty. They were not like big weird roster like maybe you had like in the past, like I don't know, 3 years, and like especially in the pre-COVID period, like it felt like everything was kind of almost solved already. But
Yeah, I think this is third WTC where I haven't felt like we should have really brought this list. Both previous WTCs, it's been guard that we forgot about each time, but this time I don't feel like it's super missed. I will say like the thing that gave us the most problem in like pairings was actually like Blood Angels. It's just a really strong list. Like we played Blood Angels like 3 times, 2 times in the pod and once out of pod, and every time I said, okay, at least there's no more Blood Angels. And then we paired into Belgium, and it's like no Blood Angels. Fuck's sake. No, but like they were actually really strong as a first defender, I think, and stronger than I thought they would be.
Maybe Space Wolf's taking a little bit too much of the room there, actually.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it was very expected, obviously, now that the Iron Priest wasn't going to be nerfed for the rules lock as well. And Blood Angels actually plays a lot differently, and I guess Liam has like some play into Eldari as well, whereas Space Wolves doesn't really have much play.
I don't really. I think Space Wolves, depending on the variant, like have probably a bit more play into Eldari than Blood Angel, but like I think. The good thing was Blood Angel was an amazing defender because on a dance table it just plays so well. So like it was like when every people were putting a shooty list in defense, we had the opposite approach of putting the melee list in defense to counter the heavy ball, and it was quite nice. Like there were not a lot of faction that could beat Blood Angel on his table.
You guys are missing a really significant army here, I think. And JSJ, you should be ashamed of yourself. Crude Hunting Pack is clearly the army.
But can I just say that it's so insane that Tau got one of the biggest buffs ever. Like the change to Marker Light was an insane buff to that army, and they're still not even playable.
Wait. Because we've got the list, the low represented armies. I've got Orcs, Tower Custodians, Admech, and Grey Knights. All had 5 or less players. Do you think there is room for these factions in the high-end competitive team event, the highest end of 8-mans? Obviously, Admech, I think we all agree, is a completely kind of player-dependent one, and Poland obviously did well with that. But, Orcs, Tower Custodians, and Grey Knights, is there a spot for them, realistically speaking, or is it
Brian is going to try to convince you that Orcs has play, and they do not. That is not true. He thinks it's true, but it's not true. It might be true if you're Brian. But I think Tau, as I said, like they got such a big buff, and I still don't think they're good. Like I think they need GW tables to even like have a chance at all. Custodes, I think is similar. Like we have a lot of Custodes players in Sweden, and I think Custodes on this would have crushed groups and been awful when you started playing against the top nations.
Yeah, okay. So, like, a lot of these factions, I'm not seeing Alex, Liam, or Brian B particularly inspired about these other
I gotta get my spiel about orcs being fun. I do think that there are a couple differences between armies here, right? So, for example, I think that Tau have fundamental issues with how 10th edition wants you to play the game, with how they're structured and have to play the game, right? And I think that's part of the reason why these buffs that keep happening are not quite tipping them there, right? Custodes, I feel like, is an army which, if the meta has the right answers to them, being 3-1 guys with high saves, they also tend to fall off. And when they don't have that, they tend to be pretty good. But if they're like in a kind of a spot where it's like if the light's shining on them, they die, and if it's not, they're in a pretty good spot. So it's pretty binary. Admech, I think it's just player based. I think it's a very good army. Might arguably, I know Meissen, I think, considers it the best team army for teams. Grey Knights. Getting a new codex, they don't matter. Orcs, I actually feel like play 10th edition pretty well, right? I think that like Orcs, the way they want to play the game, they have a lot of stuff. They can do actions, they can do missions, they can hold primary. Like they're playing the mission pretty well, but I feel like everything is kind of just like passed them by a bit. So I think they just need a little bit of help. So a couple more points, roll back some stuff, stop trying to make them shoot guns, give them the axe, and then I think they're in a pretty good spot. Like I actually I earnestly think that if I wouldn't have taken Thousand Suns, I would have probably done. I would have needed more help in pairings, but I would have done better with orcs because I think that orcs are pretty good into the meta we went into with knights and everything else, and I think that they have ways of playing played which are pretty sweet. So I actually think orcs are like they definitely need help and want help, but I think they have of these besides Admech, which is the leading spot. I would say that orcs are the next closest to having a spot on teams.
Okay. Well, it's a shame you're not going to be playing them at ETC, Brian, and instead you're playing guard. So, okay. One thing that I wanted to circle back on was last question. Emperor's Children, obviously coming into a meta where knights were maybe prevalent. We saw John Lennon, of course, take them. Was that a good choice in the long run? Would Alex maybe or Jonathan or Liam, do you wish that you had taken Emperor's Children, or is it a bit too hard to make work, perhaps?
So for us, it's easy. The only other Emperor Children player that would have been there, it was me, and I think Eldar was better in every way. So, but I could have seen it, but yeah.
I would say if John Lennon was Swedish, we would have played Emperor Children. I don't think there's any other reason for it.
And I was playing at Emperor Children until the very last Sunday before the list submission. So I just didn't trust in the very end. Because even if we knew, as we discussed before, both Knight or anything else was a bad choice, Emperor Children played really poorly in these bad choice for us, so I just couldn't take it. In the very end, I should have taken it, and that was a mistake on my part. But it was okay. It was okay, and I don't know if the army gonna be one of the best for now. Because as we discussed, Death Guard Nef wasn't enough, and he pushed you more into the Vigilant build, which is good against EC. And there is still the Chaos Knight living around. Like EC got some stupid counter, and every time you can lose against one player that take one stupid thing, and you cannot go past through it. For example, if you play one random player that play for fun 20 warrior in Necron, you're stuck into that, and you're just gonna lose. Because the players think it's fun, and you just lose because you cannot go through it. Don't get your pledge, you get auto C, for example, or anything else. But it's definitely gonna be a strong faction, and we're gonna see if they get some love in the next data slate, which is, I think from the article it say in September anyway, and we're gonna see if they get some love.
Okay, I'll tell you now. I've got as much hope of Zen getting buffed as I do Eldari getting nerfed. So, about 0% chance there, I think.
Let's believe. When you believe, everything can go through. I take example as Liam. Liam is a bit of a narc himself, because when you go for a stupid play, because he believes that can go through, he goes through because he just believes it so hard, and that works. For example, he's like, okay, that's fine. So
Got a manifester, dude. See, you get it. That's why it works.
He's a knock.
There we go. All right, guys. That was the last question. Thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate the time carving out for this one. Is there any last thoughts that anyone wanted to drop before we shoot off? Or nope.
It's okay for my part.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks. Catch you guys later. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the 40k Fireside. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, check out the YouTube members area, and we look forward to seeing you again next time by the Fireside.